John's one of my favorite guests. I've always said I think Oklahoma State, Iowa State. I'd throw in those guys up in Manhattan, Kansas. We see things a lot alike. I think we have situations that are similar. I think we can appreciate each other um, really well. And unfortunately, or fortunately, how you look at it, this is a huge game between two of those state teams that I think are the two best teams in the Big 12 right now. And John calls the games for the Cyclones. I don't know. You agree with that? I mean, you think these two teams may be the two best right now going in the Big 12?
Well, it's hard to say. I think you could make that argument. Kansas State would probably want to have something to say about it, but and certainly it's too early, I think, to rule out Oklahoma and Texas just because of, we're only a third of the way through this thing. But right now, these two teams are playing really good football, and we'll see, Robert. There's been such a long gap between games. For Iowa State 2 weeks and for Oklahoma State 3 weeks. I'm just curious to see if these teams are kind of rusty coming out of the gate and how they, which team can kind of get into an offensive rhythm earliest. I think is going to go a long way toward determining who has a better chance to win this football game.
Yeah, and I also think it's we had Randy Peterson on last hour from the Des Moines Register. I think this is an old school game. I think the team that wins this is going to be the team that runs the football the best and does the best job of stopping the other team from running the football, because I think that's what both want to do. Now, you can help me. I mean, I know you were in our booth last year in Ames before the game, and we were kind of, I think we were at that point. I remember Dave and John and I thinking, God, this season could go either way. I mean, we were kind of a tipping point coming to Ames, Iowa, and Iowa State, I think, was playing pretty good and had discovered a guy named Brees Hall. And I had said to the guys before the game, I said, if they unleash this kid on us and mix it with some Brock Purdy pass and run stuff, that they could do a pretty good job on. But I watched that game and I still don't understand why Iowa State threw the ball as much as they did that day. They really, I mean, it was unbelievable. And in the fourth quarter, they threw it to Oklahoma State a few times, and that was the difference in the game. And I don't expect Matt Campbell's team to throw the ball 60 plus times on Saturday.
No, I totally agree with you, Robert. And Matt was the first to say that after the game, that they asked him about 63 pass attempts as a team. So he said that's too many. We want to have more of a balance there. And actually, Brees Hall was having a pretty good game. I think what happened was Oklahoma State got out to that 21-10 lead, and Iowa State was in kind of catch-up mode for most of the game. And hey, Brock Purdy's a very good quarterback, and so they feel very comfortable with the ball in his hands. And he was having a really good game until those last three throws that got picked off. But absolutely, it was out of character. And I think especially, as you mentioned, this year, it would be way out of character for either of these teams to put it in the air 63 times with the way they've been able to run the football. And you've got the two best running backs in the Big 12 Conference in Chuba Hubbard and Brees Hall. I think both these teams will be trying to establish the run game. And these are I think Oklahoma State, I've said this for years, Oklahoma State has had the best ability, probably with Oklahoma, to balance the run and the pass, to really be unpredictable, to really keep a defense off balance because of its offensive balance. And that's what Iowa State has found this year with Brees Hall. He has really taken a lot off the shoulders of Brock Purdy. And when you can run the ball effectively, it opens up so many things with your play action and your RPOs. And I think some of that can be even more effective for Brock going forward. But Iowa State's offense has been efficient. They're averaging 7 yards a play in conference play, tops in the Big 12. And a lot of it's been because of what Brees Hall has done. And that offensive line certainly deserves a lot of credit for that.
And you mentioned the time off and whether the teams could come out rusty a little bit. I don't think that. I mean, again, I'm not around Iowa State, but they just had one bye week. They ought to be fresh. I look at Oklahoma State, and they've had three because of the Baylor situation, but it helped the offensive line. Those guys. You lost two starters in the first game, and they're not coming back. Certainly not this week. but it allowed those two pups that have been inserted to get more reps and for Charlie Dickey to coach them up and get them. I think it's really helped the offensive line. Spencer Sanders is going to be 100%. Um, beyond the offensive line, Oklahoma State's they're as healthy as they've been since they opened the season against Tulsa. I mean, everybody's on deck. I know there's a couple of Iowa State guys that probably won't play. We know uh, Johnson's going to have to sit because of the targeting penalty, but I would think we're going to see the best versions of these two teams from a health standpoint, and that'll be good.
Yeah, I think you're going to see two really veteran teams going at it on Saturday with a lot of good players, a lot of playmakers all over the field. And you and I talked, Robert, long before the season. We talked this summer about kind of the veteranness, if that's a word, of the Iowa State and Oklahoma State rosters and how they were two of the more veteran teams in the Big 12, and that could really help in a year, especially when you didn't have spring football at a lot of places, including Iowa State. And I think we're seeing that play out. When you started the conversation here by saying these might be the two best teams in the Big 12, it's possible. And I think one of the reasons it's possible is because they're two of the most experienced teams in the Big 12. And when you get two talented, experienced teams, well coached, I think you've got the recipe for a really, really good football game. And history tells us with the last 5 meetings between these two schools coming down to the last possession that we're probably in for more of the same on Saturday. I think it's going to be a whale of a game. I'm really excited about it. And you're right about the health. I think, that's certainly a good thing about having so much time in between games for these two schools. And I don't think it's ultimately going to decide the game, but I'm just curious to see which team can kind of get in a good rhythm. And if there's a couple 3-and-outs before that kind of starts happening, which wouldn't be untypical for Iowa State anyway. They sometimes have a couple 3-and-outs before they kind of hit their stride. But they were in it from the word go against Texas Tech. So we'll see. I'm excited to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, and I think it's a great X and O game. I think both teams want to run the ball. I think both teams have good defenses, but yeah, I look at John Heacock, the defensive coordinator for the Cyclones, and he's the kind of the father in this league of the rush 3 drop 8 concepts, and they've been copied by everybody. And now watching tape of his defense, he's come up with some new wrinkles, and against Oklahoma in particular, they use the blitz a little bit more, and he's bringing even guys off the corner, but kind of what he's doing, still protecting the back end, doesn't want to give up those big plays, but he'll sacrifice from time to time some of the 500 pass defenders and bring one or two of those with the hope that the quarterback is going to be on his back before he finds those holes in the short coverage. And I just think John Heacock's a very smart coach and has done such a great job in finding a way to defend the modern offense in college football. I think he's really a smart guy, and you would know better. You're around him.
Well, I agree with you. I think he's great, and I think the wrinkles that he's been able to add have been a result of they really have started to establish the kind of defensive system that they run. They kind of threw it out there a couple of years ago to see what happened and liked it. Now they've been able to recruit to it, and so they have more guys that kind of fit that system. And when you look at the defensive line, that's where I think it's giving John so many options defensively because Iowa State's done a really good job on first down of limiting opponents. Opponents have run 111 plays on first down. 53 of them, almost half of them, have gone for 3 yards or less. And that's Enyi Wazirike, Zach Peterson, Isaiah Lee, those guys along the front line. When they're able to do that and eventually get
John, where'd you get that McDonald guy? That guy came out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it because those 3 guys I just mentioned have been really effective early in sets of downs, and then you get a team into 3rd and long, and all of a sudden you put Will McDonald on one end and Jaquan Bailey, the school's all-time sack leader, on the other end, and Latrell Bankston, who's a pretty good pass rusher in the middle, and they've been able to get pressure with just 3, which is huge because then you can still drop 8 and have that effectiveness behind you, but still get pressure on the quarterback. Those 3 guys I just mentioned, where they're in there on 3rd and long, have combined for, I believe, 8 sacks so far this season. So it's been effective, and as we mentioned earlier, just being able to recruit to it. He's gotten more guys that really kind of fit what he wants to do defensively, and it's become more situational, which is, if you have time to substitute, allows you to get some of those things in place.
Yeah, again, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And when you look at the other side, and you're around Matt, you do the coaches show with him and around him some during the week. Yeah, because he's pretty good at not showing his hand. I sat in and listened to the coaches news Zoom the other day. What do you think concerns them? I mean, obviously, Oklahoma State hasn't been as demonstrative offensively, but they showed signs of kicking it back into gear against Kansas. Now they'll get Spencer Sanders back. Or is it Oklahoma State's improvement in the way they're playing defense? Or I mean, probably Matt's like everybody. He worries about the whole thing.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I think for Oklahoma State offensively, it's a really small sample size this year of Sanders. He's only thrown 2 passes before he got hurt, and so and the thing that he brings that scares you is his ability to take a broken play and turn it into something big. 10 rushes last year, 20 yards or more. He's a guy that can scramble and all of a sudden take a play that doesn't look like it's going anywhere and turn it into something big for his offense. And so that certainly scares you. And then the big play, the home run ability of Oklahoma State is what scares him. Because, a year ago, you look at that game in Ames, Iowa State had 30 first downs, Oklahoma State had 14. Iowa State outgained them by about 80. But Oklahoma State hit the home run plays. Braden Johnson's long touchdown, Tylan Wallace's long touchdown, Chuba Hubbard had a 65-yard touchdown run, and then they had the pick six. And so they hit those home run plays, and it was the difference in the game. And that always scares you with Oklahoma State because they have a lot of home run hitters. And then defensively, same thing. They just have playmakers all over the field and veteran playmakers. You see the names, and it's guys you recognize and have been out there for 3 years, and so that scares you too because you know that there's guys there that can turn a mistake you make into points for them. And so there's a lot of things that concern you about Oklahoma State for sure.
John Walters, we're going to let him go because you can always tell when it's a big game. He's got a bunch of radio to do this week, and I know I've heard him a couple of times. I think he was on with the SXM guys the other day and yesterday, in fact, and I did that the other day and was on with their national deal this morning. I've got Austin called me. I'm on Austin radio in Texas tomorrow, so you know it's a big game when they're paying more attention to ours than their comeback effort
Yeah.
against Baylor. So I know you've got a radio gig that's a radio spot coming up, so we'll let you go, but we'll see you on Saturday, John.
I appreciate it, Robert. It's always good talking to you.
All right, John Walters, play-by-play voice of the Iowa State Cyclones.